unstable. I feel able to turn the tables. I could do this. Just keep moving, keep your hands up, stupid. I feel lucid, a new viewing. I can see the end, I can see my future, I can view it. It's right there for the taking. Everything I've ever wanted, dreams are just waiting. I just gotta fight for it, willing to die for it, willing to like soreness.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000, it still sucks. This is Philip J. Price, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one-stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
You guys know what to do, just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drunk Turkey Show, the DT Show. I'm Daniel, and tonight we have a twofer, or we got two shows going on tonight. First, I'm going to be talking about the Jack and Lilly Sullivan disappearance. I got some interesting news that has come out of Nova Scotia about where the location of the boot print was, thoughts of the investigators, how the search went down. With the cadaver dogs. They are now gone. I got some information about the vehicle that was towed belonging to Daniel and its current whereabouts and what's going on with it. And then a little bit later after this show ends, tonight I'm going to have Dr. Vona on. We're going to be covering the Celeste Rivas case involving, I believe he's a singer named David, spelled D4VD. And so we're going to be going into that case, kind of breaking down the information that is coming out there. I believe that is happening out of Los Angeles. And so please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell. I know you guys and some guys have asked, like, how do we support the show? I really never ask for any donations, but for those that do ask, up here in the top corner, right about right here somewhere, you should see a QR code that'll get you to our PayPal if you want to, send us a donation. By all means. If you don't worry about it. All right. So without further ado, let's break it down. Let's get into today's conversation. And so I want to start off by by saying first and foremost that I have agreed with Daniel Martell to have an interview. So we're going to have an exclusive interview that's going to be happening in the early part of this upcoming week. I don't know exactly which date. I know what date we are planning on recording said interview. It'll probably be aired out shortly afterwards. It's going to be a very extensive interview. I want to kind of go one step at a time from the beginning. What happened the day before, what happened that morning, what happened after, how was the investigation, what is it that law enforcement did to him, and as far as the investigation goes, what was his part in it? What were things that he was told early on? How have things changed in the investigation with his conversation with law enforcement, and so much more? We're going to break it all down. That's going to be happening in the early part of next week. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, because that's the only way we get this coverage out. That's the only way we get, eyes on the truth, so to speak. So yes, that interview is going to be happening probably this weekend. So stay tuned for that. And without further ado, let's break it down. And there's actually one thing I actually forgot to do before we get going. But I'm going to do this in the background in the meantime. While everybody is coming in, I'm just going to pull up Google Earth because I want to show you guys more or less where the boot prints are and how they are retrospect to the location of everything else. And there's some interesting things that I've went back into the RCMP documents that I reread, and maybe a little bit of contradicting information, so to speak. But let me, oh gosh, I hope I didn't delete it. So give me a second. I got to pull it up. Nope, it's right here. All right. So without further ado, let's break it down. Let's first talk about the information that happened with the vehicle that was towed by law enforcement. I believe it was, I want to say it was on Saturday night or something like that. And the vehicle is now back at Daniel's possession, back in his house. Here's a video or a picture of the vehicle. As you can see, that's today's date, 5:41 p.m. And there's a picture of Daniel's vehicle. So I don't want to get too much into his vehicle. That's his personal ride. But that's a picture of his vehicle at their place on, I'll just pull it back up. You guys probably paused on it and everything else anyways. Friday, September 26, 2025, 5:41 p.m. Daniel Martell's Cadillac Escalade at his house. So a lot of people were kind of like, well, it's interesting that they towed his vehicle. What does that mean? And a lot of people were saying it must mean something suspicious. It's odd, the timing. All right, so let's break it down. Let's look at it and figure out what is odd or suspicious about it. What could be odd and suspicious about it? So first and foremost, this is a vehicle that he had just recently purchased. I believe that the reason that they towed it was because of a registration issue. I think you have so many days in Nova Scotia or in Canada to register your vehicle. And if you don't, then you're caught out on the street driving or operating a vehicle in that manner with the registration not up to date, then they will tow it and impound it. And so from what I understand, that was the case. Now, some people were saying, well, maybe perhaps they wanted to see if they moved things, right? There was the RCMP had came out to the public and notified everybody that they were going to be doing a cadaver search. So maybe perhaps their thoughts are that, some of the folks that believe that Daniel and Janie had something to do with this, their thoughts are that maybe perhaps since they were aware that RCMP was coming with cadaver dogs, that maybe perhaps they moved things around, evidence, bodies, stuff like that. And maybe perhaps there's some sort of evidence now in a vehicle that they hadn't owned, but maybe 35, 40 days, meaning that this vehicle wasn't around during the time of the disappearance. This is a vehicle that was recently purchased. And so I understand the process and the thinking about it, but I don't understand the timing in which they would have picked up the vehicle. See, first and foremost, RCMP is the agency or the persons that went out public with the information of the cadaver dogs. Now, did they say that out loud so that they can, spook Daniel and Janie and get them into moving things? Maybe, but why are you going to go and try to pick up the vehicle that night, per se? Why not wait until, or watch him, throughout the entire time frame? Why take his vehicle away? Now, if he was going to go and visit somewhere, visit a crime scene, visit a location in that vehicle, well, now you've left him on foot and it probably he's probably not showing up. So why not just watch him to see where he goes? And if you're looking for evidence and that's the sole purpose of the intent of picking up the vehicle, why are you doing it then and not when the cadaver dogs get there? Give him the entire weekend, the entire Saturday, the entire Sunday to go out there, move evidence, go do some things so that you can catch him either in the act or shortly afterwards. So the timing in which it occurred doesn't really jive with me with some sort of sting operation. Now, the next thing about it is that, all right, if they were to have gone in there and the sole purpose was to tow the vehicle for some sort of forensic purpose, they wanted to check it out, they wanted to look inside of it, they're going to be limited to what they can do, to what they can visually see. So you still need probable cause to conduct investigations that are, if you're looking for microscopic DNA, if you're utilizing things like amino black or, some of these things that would require black lights to show, blood or whatever the case may be, that all requires a warrant, right? Now, what they could do in a situation where you tow the vehicle is inventory. And so you have to log down everything that's in the vehicle. That way, when the vehicle is picked up from the tow yard, you don't have somebody coming back saying, hey, I had a Versace, pair of sunglasses in there or something of that nature, a Louis Vuitton bag, and it's missing. We went through it. We had the body cam. We did the inventory. Those items weren't in there. And so that is what the main, idea or what the point is of the inventory. Now, obviously, if you had like a situation, and I'm going to take Daniel out of this, but if you had a situation where you believed that that somebody, had drugs in their trunk and they're acting suspicious, and you go ahead and arrest them for an offense just so that you can search the vehicle and during an inventory, You can pop the trunk, you can look into the back to inventory things that you can see, but he wouldn't be able to remove the carpet and do a bunch of other things, right? And so if he pops the trunk and there's something there, then you stop the search immediately and you go and you get a warrant. But you're limited to, like I said, what you can see. So anything outside of that really wouldn't be feasible. I think they would have had a better opportunity to have really searched the vehicle if that was their intent by just asking. From what I understand is Daniel and Janie have been very cooperative, even including up to this search. They didn't find out about the dogs actually going to their house until the morning of that the search started, which was on Monday. And so you have, they showed up, and to me, I thought it was, interesting. And that kind of tells you how much cooperation that they had, because they didn't show up with a warrant. Now, if you have a warrant and you go and ask and they still say, yeah, you still present them with the warrant, because now, again, Canada could be different than the United States, but in most places, from what I understand, is if you are doing something out of permission, it can be stopped at any moment, right? So if they go into the house under permission only, and Daniel or Janie say as they're approaching the back door or the back bedroom, no, we want you to stop your search, don't go any further. That's what you got to do. And if they tell you to get out, then you got to get out, and then you got to go get a warrant, then come back. So it really doesn't make any sense to do that. So you either show up with a warrant, and even if you ask and they say yes, so, oh, great, we're glad you were cooperative, but here's a warrant anyways, and we're going to search it to its fullest. So I was surprised, well, not surprised, but for them to show up and ask and be confident enough to go through and do their investigation, they must have known that, or felt at least confident enough that Janie and Daniel were going to allow them to do their searches as needed, which ended up being the case. From what I understand, it was multiple searches with multiple teams and dogs. It was 2 different dogs. One came in, one left, another one came in, and then that one left, and then the other one came back in. So I believe it was searched a total of 3 different times. And and it was on their property. From what I understand is that the dogs were released, taken off the leash. Janie and Daniel stood off the property, and they allowed the searchers to do their thing. When it came to searching underneath the property, so what they did was from what I understand, and I'm sure I'm going to get all this from Daniel in our interview, the handlers basically had Daniel climb underneath the trailer, and what they did was the investigators had a flashlight, and then they would point where they wanted Daniel to go and move things around and show them certain things. They didn't want to get under it themselves, but Daniel cooperated, went down there. They if they pointed the light in a certain direction, he crawled that way. They pointed in another, he crawled the other way back. And so Janie got some information from the RCMP as far as when it comes to the dogs. There was a search team that was out there, a search team that had been looking for somebody who had been, I guess, lost on a kayak. Now, I don't know if the dogs have been called out in that situation or not, but the dog team the team that they used, which were there, their dogs were specifically, I guess, made for open air scenting dogs, which is what they're looking for, is for the scent in the air that is inconsistent with what should be around. So if you have a person walking through the woods, that smell of that person is going to be stronger because it's out of place, so to speak. And that was the type of animals that they had utilized. Janie had mentioned that she had some clothing that she had put together for the searchers, and all they did was put it on I believe either the hood or the roof of a vehicle that was parked outside. A lot of people question, why is it that the dogs only went up to the driveway? And my answer to that is, if these were in fact the dogs that are open air scented, don't scent for specific type of smells, then from, for instance, clothing and things of that nature. Well, if it's trying to smell for, I guess, humans in the area, there was a significant amount of people that had congregated in the driveway, whether it was Malaya's family, some of the search crew, Daniel, Janie, some of the folks that came to help with the search. They all at one point or another were out in that driveway. So just a piece of, thought there. All right. So without further ado, let's break down where the boot print was. And this show is probably not going to be the longest. I'll probably do some calls if anybody's interested in joining here in a little bit. So be ready for that. But here is a video where, based on what they told Janie. So Janie got this description. Janie asked law enforcement where it was that the boot print was, and it was down the pipeline between two roads. Like halfway is what they said. And so we looked at the halfway point. This isn't going to be exact per se. This is just the halfway point. Now, what the halfway point to, the law enforcement officer may not be exactly 50% of the way. It might be 40% or 60%, somewhere in between there, but somewhere in the middle between these two roads. And so here's kind of where they said it was at. And this was done by Daniel. He's pointed it out. It was pretty far up in there. And so there's the two different roads. And I'm going to pull up Google Earth so that we can look at it, so we can see that together on a bigger screen. But that's where Daniel had marked it. And here's Google Earth. And so you have Daniel's home. There's the blanket. And apparently it was somewhere between this location and then there's a road that intersects way over here. You see how far that is? Let me just double check if that's correct. Yeah, I can see a Y's off here. There's the Y. This is north. It's because it's a little bit, it's right here. So that's where that Y is off. It's because it's at a different angle. The angle of the angle is all weird. So there's that Y. So it's somewhere around here at this point. Let me put a mark. Yeah, well, let's measure it between this roadway and right here real quick. How much of a distance is that? We'll put it in miles. It's 2.2 miles. Kilometers. About 3.58 kilometers across. And so somewhere in the middle. So you're looking at about 1.76 kilometers from the roadway. So if these, and it's pretty far in there, that's pretty far in there, guys. Now, how could they have gotten here? So there is a road that comes up this way. If they did, this is where the blanket was found, right? So if they somehow are the ones that are responsible for dropping off the blanket, and it's not something that is planted, let's just go under that premises that the kids were walking and they left this blanket here. They could have walked down this trail, walked down the street, turned up the street, then continued down this trail here into this open area. So it's right here into this open area. And right here, they would have ended up right on that pipeline somewhere in the middle. Look at that, right in the middle. I wonder if this is the possible way that they walked. Now, they very well could have just turned up and then turned off this direction. But I think it's possible that they walked this way down this road. Through this trail. Into this open area. And into the bushes. I mean, you're looking at 1 kilometer by doing it this way. from where that's 1 kilometer. If you do it this way, from the blanket, which is 1.6 kilometers away, I believe, from the house, from Daniel's house. And I think you could have walked here to this location in about 16 minutes to the blanket location. From here to here would not have taken very long. You're looking at, I mean, it's only 1 kilometer away. Maybe another 15 minutes tops. That's barely over half a mile down that road. Dogs were taken that way in the beginning, no sense. Yeah, I get that, but dogs aren't perfect. You know, I think a lot of people expectations of the dogs, especially the ones that were there that day. I think your expectations might be a little bit high. There's plenty of times that dogs were in an area and they did not smell anything. And there was a guy that was retired our RCMP, and he was talking about the dogs that where you have this effect where if they don't smell something when they're there the first time, that might give you the false impression that there's nothing there. They don't bat 100. You know, I would say they probably miss a lot more. To be 110% honest with you, especially in woods like this, you know, than they probably hit on the first time. You know, I think that it's probably a few times they go through a spot before, you know, yeah, and I'm sure there's plenty of instances where they hit on the very first time, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's not as common as you think, that they're going to go out there and they're going to smell something that, oh, we know that they're there. You know, the dogs weren't there into this area until 4 p.m. We know that because of some documents we have right here. So for one, the boot prints weren't found on the pipeline until Friday night going into Saturday morning. So this is 11, midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning when the boot prints were found. Right. And so, yeah, if they went and they brought a dog at that time, it's been a significant amount of time that has occurred. There's a lot of things that could have gone down and reasons why they didn't find anything. I just wouldn't put it past or just think that, oh, man, a dog went out there, so that's 100% that they didn't find anything. That means that there's nothing there. I think that would be that wouldn't be the best thing to do, especially if you're trying to actually like find where these kids would have gone. You take it into consideration. All right, the dogs went out there, but kind of like the dogs went back out there, you know, the cadaver dogs. They go back out there because there is a margin of error when it comes to these things. And there's a good possibility that those dogs may have missed something, and that's why they brought the cadaver dogs to see if there was something that they missed. Now, from what I understand, the cadaver dogs didn't find anything anywhere. So they were searching in the area and they didn't find anything anywhere. So it's it's still is very questionable about what occurred, right? Because you know it is weird that they didn't find anything. They haven't found anything out there outside of the blanket and the boot prints. But then again, I mean, that is something, right? You know, the blanket and the boot prints, which, by the way, I got some information about the blanket. I was talking to Daniel about this. I was like, so what made you think that the blanket wasn't Lilly and Jack's? And his response was, he didn't say that about that blanket. There was multiple things that were found out there. A water bottle, a boy's shirt that didn't belong to Jack, but it was a child's shirt. There was also another pink blanket that was found out on the search out in the middle of nowhere that was unrelated, that didn't belong. And that was the blanket that he said that didn't belong. He claims, I haven't seen any of these things, but he says that that it was a misunderstanding when people thought that he said that the first pink blanket. And when we go through here on these documents, when it comes to the pink blanket, it says here that they showed a picture to Malaya and Daniel who confirmed the blanket belonged to Lilly. So once they got a picture of the blanket, they were able to confirm that it was. It doesn't say here that they denied it or any of those things. Now, you're not going to find any of the miscellaneous items that they found that didn't belong to Jack or Lilly or that were unrelated. You're not going to find that in these reports. Just like in most criminal cases, you're not going to find things about the people that were cleared. You're not going to find out the investigation that went on about the people that were cleared. Why? Because those aren't the people that are on trial. Like, for instance, I know, like in the Brian Koberger case, that Jack Decor, one of the boyfriends of the victims, was heavily investigated by law enforcement. They asked for his DNA. They took pictures of him. They did a lot of things, but yet you won't find any of that in any of the documents outside of what the interview was that was related to what they did earlier that night while they were together. There's not much about anything else that happened during the murders, what he was doing, any of those things, because it's not relevant to the case against Brian Koberger. Another shirt out there, a water bottle, another blanket, which was intact. This one was not torn. This one was not a piece. It was, I don't know the condition of it. Outside of it was intact. It was a full blanket, and that was not the one that was found in the tree. Now, what he did tell me was that the blanket had been in the garbage for over a week, and that when they searched the trash can, when law enforcement came in and searched the trash can, the trash with the blanket in it had a hole in the side of it. There wasn't anything sticking out of it, so it's not like somebody pulled the blanket out and it tore halfway coming out of the hole. It was just a hole in the side. He said that the blanket was in pretty rough condition before. It wouldn't have taken much to tear it if somebody did, but that it was at the bottom of the trash can with all the trash on top of it. So I question when that blanket was pulled out of that trash can. Could it have been an animal earlier on that week, shortly after they dropped it in there? Could an animal have gotten into it, tore it, like a raccoon or something? And then it get out there by the movement of animals. I don't know. It'd be 100% speculation on my side to go one way or another in that. But that was the information that he had given me, was that the trash bag was at the bottom of the trash. There was other trash on top of it. It was getting pretty close to the time when trash was going to come and pick up. And so it'd been in there for over a week. And so it had been at the bottom of the trash bag. Nothing on top of it seemed, from what I understand, my conversation with him, seemed disturbed. But that there was a tear on the side of the trash bag that contained the blanket. So documents here kind of back up what Daniel is saying. They confirmed that the blanket belonged to Lilly after being shown a picture. I really don't see anything that contradicts that. I know some people were going to say, well, he said this and said that. Show me. I'll be honest, like Daniel talks quite a bit. So sometimes I even have to go back and read twice to make sure I picked up on what he said correctly. All right. And so, as I said, I mean, I'm sure here it would say, because they did talk about in this document, it talks about where Daniel mentions that they went to, I think it's Toro or something like that on Wednesday, but it was Thursday, or vice versa, but that he was wrong. So in these documents, it indicates when Daniel was wrong about something, or when Daniel said something that was found to be inaccurate. It doesn't say here that he ever said, that he ever denied that the pink blanket that was found wrapped, or draped in the tree didn't belong to Lilly. I don't see that in the documents. So is it out there in a report that he did, or an interview? I haven't seen one. I've seen, I think, majority of his interviews, that somebody say it in a chat room somewhere. Maybe. I mean, was it really him? I don't know. I haven't seen it. I've only been covering the case for a short period of time. So I can't confirm with one way or another. But I personally haven't seen where he denied it. I've asked him about it. He says he's never denied that the blanket that was found in the tree was not Lily's. He said he's never denied that they found a different blanket, and that was the one that he denied, that said that it wasn't theirs. All right. Let's see. The blanket would have been soaked. It had rained. Well, I mean, I think it, it may have been soaked, and I think it may have even been soaked when they found it. They found it going into, they found it at 4 p.m. Right. So it says right here that the blanket was found at 4 p.m. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't say whether or not it was wet, whether it was soaked, or if it's dry. I couldn't tell you. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. That's a good point. Blanket went for testing. There's something we'll find out. I hope so. Because, I mean, if it's so, Daniel has come forward and said that he's spoken with law enforcement and that they believe that it could be planted. Now, I've been wondering about this myself. Like, what are the, maybe not so much, why would somebody plant it? Why would they plant it here? When would they plant it? Why would they think it's planted? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some questions: the who, what, when, where, and why, right? So why would somebody think that it is planted? Now, the only thing that I have heard, and it's only been statements, I haven't had anything conclusive, so I cannot say without 100% shadow of a doubt or anything like that. But in my conversations with Daniel, he's mentioned, and he's only just said, because I've asked him, like, how do you know that, or how do you think, or why do you think they think it's planted? And the only thing he's mentioned in talking is a handful of times said something about the school bus and the videos. So I've asked and I've wondered, when does a school bus pass by? The school bus passes by just shortly before 4 p.m. Every day. So somewhere between 3:50 and 4:10 is when the school bus passes by here. Now, I guess the suspicion or the speculation might be that it was found at 4 p.m. by Malaya's family. If it's not on camera at 3:55 or 3:50 when the bus passes by, then that's something weird to note. Now, I have zero idea if that is the case. I do not know that it was not there, but I wonder if is that why, like, so for instance, Daniel wants her, I believe it's Haley, to take a lie detector test because she's the one that found the blanket. And when he did his recent interview, he mentioned that was one of the things that he mentioned he wanted more people to come in for another round of polygraph tests. Well, what he meant by that is her. Now, I don't know if it's true that the bus didn't pick it up. I don't know which direction. Well, I do know because let me see if I can pull it up real quick. Don't know if the time's going to pop up on it, but I'll tell you what time I got the picture. So give me a second. Let me see if I can find it real quick. It was at 3:51. 3:56. All right. So give me a second. I'm going to pull this up here in a sec. So I got to come with facts. You got to come with proof and evidence with everything that you say, right? You can't just be throwing out things without any. So I asked, hey, can you do me a favor and keep an eye out for when the bus passes by your place? Here's the bus coming back. Now, it is Friday. Again, this is at 3:56. So when would it have passed by? Apparently it's coming from this direction. It's coming from this direction. Let me close this. It's coming from this direction, from where the boot print is, past the blanket, down Lansdowne, and then it's going to turn onto Daniel and Janie's road right here. All right. So it's coming down and it's turning here at 3:56. So it's probably passing by around 3:50. I mean, if it's 16 minutes walking, a kilometer, doing about 20 miles an hour down these roads, 30 miles an hour, it'd probably take you somewhere about 3-4 minutes. So maybe 3:51 is when he's passing by. Now, one of the things that I said when it came to Daniel and him searching for the blanket was I had said that because he says that he was up and down and he didn't see it there earlier that day. He was on an ATV and he went searching through the woods. If he exited out this way from the pipeline, let me make this bigger. He exited it from the pipeline and then goes down Lansdowne Road and coming in this direction, given how far back. Now, let me pull it up real quick. So I want to show you guys something. Let's pull this up. I don't want to show that. I want to show this. There you go. So the first thing I want to show is the landscape. It's going uphill. There's an incline there. And it's up back here. And it's a good distance away from the street. It's not very, very close. So if a vehicle was traveling, that bus would have been traveling the same direction as this SUV right here, the gray one that's facing us. The bus would have been traveling that direction. So something over here where my mouse is may not come up. You may not be able to see it from the roadway. You may not be able to capture it on camera either. And so let me fast forward it to where Daniel's pointing this out here. You see how it is over there? Now he's pulling up at this point, I believe, on his vehicle. Or is he walking? So he's walking at this point. So this is if you were, at your point of view is if you were 6 foot tall, not if you were inside of a bus. And I'm not sure where the camera is located on the bus. So I'm not sure if that camera is going to be at the same eye level or the same point of view of where this camera is. So if it's coming in from a higher angle, there's a good possibility that this blanket just may not be visible from that road and from this direction. You get what I'm saying? Now, it definitely could be planted. It could be there, not at 3:55 or whatever when the bus passes by, and there at 4 o'clock when Malaya's family is getting it. That would be very, very suspicious, in my opinion. I would have to agree that if it is not there at 3:50, and I've been one that's kind of holding and reserving my opinion on Malaya because, one, I haven't talked to her, so I don't know her side of things. I have not spoken to her. I've spoken to Daniel. I've heard his voice. I've asked him questions. I've seen how he's answered those questions. I've not done the same with Malaya. So the only thing that I can rely on when it comes to like talking about Malaya is what's been in the reports. And from what I understand is she passed the polygraph test too. So did some members of her family that I would have assumed would have had some sort of knowledge if Haley or Hayden had knowledge of this, right? Two, she did everything that Daniel did. She, went and cooperated, gave statements, willingly did a polygraph test, the whole 9 yards. Let them search her phone. So I've been a little bit hesitant on that. Now, if that blanket is not there at 3:50 and it's there at 4, that's weird. I have to take a step back at that moment and say, all right, now this is something that's concrete. Now this is something that makes me pause. All these other crap that I've heard about, set 5 minutes here, 30 seconds there. He said he was in the woods for approximately 12.2 seconds and he wasn't there for that amount of time, or 12 minutes and 20 seconds. That stuff doesn't move the needle for me. This would. If there is a blanket that is there not there at 3:50 and it's there at 4, I got some questions. I have some questions. But is it plausible that the camera on the bus may have been out of position to have captured it? It's already coming in from the wrong direction. I don't know the height of the camera. I don't know the direction of the camera, if it's facing forward, if there's a camera that is facing to the side. I'm assuming it's a frontward and a backward camera. Maybe there is a rear camera. If there is a rear camera that is on the bus, then there's no excuses at that point. Once it surpassed this intersection, it should have seen it in the back camera. If there's one, I have no idea of that to be the case. So just kind of wanted to inform you guys of the information and give you guys my thoughts on it. but also let you guys know that this is 100% speculation on my part as of this.
The road, like 15 feet from the road. Maybe not even. Yeah, a little more than 15 feet.
Oh, that looks like trash. Somebody had asked me, what was that blue? That looks like trash. That
Maybe
looks
not
like a
even.
trash bag.
Yeah, a little more than 15 feet.
See, it's way back in there. So if we go all the way to the beginning, it's like way back here. I don't think it's right here. I think it's the one right here. It could be this one. But if there's a back camera, there's no excuses. That is going to pick up whether or not there was a blanketer there or not. I'm interested to see if there was one. If there's just the front camera, I'm going to still kind of be a little bit hesitant on it. I'm going to be like, all right, if it didn't pick it up, but the positioning of the camera is a little bit weird, it's going to make it kind of hard to see, and it's kind of hard to tell. That's different than not picking it up at all. You know what I mean? There's a difference there. There's a difference. Let's see. What's the discrepancy? So, again, like Daniel had said he had actually got the date wrong. That's why, to me, when it comes to like people saying things, like going off of memory and going off of their statements, unless it's something like huge, like in the Timothy D case, where I'm covering that case and I'm suspected of, there's this guy who ended up losing his life. He was hanging out with his buddy, and his buddy's cousin is the guy that I was going to bring up. The guy. So you have Timmy, and then he was hanging out with his buddy Caleb, and then Trevor is his cousin. Trevor and Caleb say that Trevor didn't arrive until 5 minutes before Timmy disappeared at 4 o'clock in the morning. However, there's video surveillance of them together at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's a huge indiscrepancy. That's not a matter of a little bit of time either. You know what I'm saying? And it's happening right then and there. He said, I got there, and as soon as I got there, he left. So how do you confuse I got there, and as soon as he got there, he left, and an hour that you spent, and then he went to the gas station? That's a big difference. It's a big difference. Now, with Daniel, and like I said, investigators hounded him. They even put in there that he said, I'm not trying to lie to you. I'm trying to be honest. There's just so much going on. It's hard to remember everything exactly the way it was. For him to have made that statement, that must mean that they were really hard. They were really interrogating him. From what I understand, it was a 4-hour interrogation. They saw all the red flags that everybody saw. You, I, everybody saw that. So they being law enforcement, interrogated Daniel, and they pressured him, and they wanted to figure out what was going on as well. And they have done an exhaustive investigation against him. Now, that stuff is the stuff that I follow. The bank statements, the phone records, the GPS, the stuff that can't be misinterpreted, the stuff that can't be forgotten or manipulated or changed. Factual, hardcore evidence. Polygraph test, which I know some people are going to say, hey, that's not admissible in court. It's if you fail it, that's the inadmissible part. That's not allowed in court. It's to protect a defendant who fails a polygraph test. The rules aren't there to protect the state from somebody that passed the polygraph test. That's not why the rules are there. The rules are to protect somebody who may have failed it, and because they're not 100% accurate and whatnot, they don't want somebody going in there being convicted based off of false premises. Now, when it comes to a polygraph test, false lies are more common than false truths. In fact, if somebody goes in there and does a lie and then they're able to beat it, they usually, most people that can somewhat beat the polygraph test, it's not so much that they're truthful, it comes back inconclusive. Now, like I said, we got to look at this crime as what, let's just say that there was a crime that was committed. Let's go down that rabbit hole, down that road. Crimes involving parents aren't usually premeditated, meaning it's not like Brian Koberger, who stalked a house, documented movement, turned off his phone, did all these things so that he could avoid detection. Crimes when it deals with parents and things of that nature are usually crimes of the moment, whether somebody is either under the influence of something, an accident occurs, somebody loses their crap and they're angry, somebody is out drunk and they do something. It's crimes of the moment. And so you have, when you don't have somebody who's preparing for something, it's a lot easier to figure out what's going on, right? But to me, those things are what are important. And so when you have a crime of the moment, it's not like I'm sorry, I kind of forgot where I was at, and I remember now. It's not like he planned this and he was a Navy SEAL or some sort of ex-military person that was trained in passing a lie detector test. And if he needed to somehow look it up, well, that information would have been found on his phone when they did a download of his history and search history. You don't think they'd find that? And if he was utilizing other devices or whatever, law enforcement aren't stupid. If you're thinking about it, I guarantee you they thought about it too. And they're going to look at those things, possibilities to see, did this guy use some other device to try to learn how to manipulate or pass a lie detector test? Now, it's one thing for one person to be lying and then it come out truthful, but now you have her or him. You also have Malaya that did it too, and 4 others that passed the lie detector test. And the crazy thing about it too is it wasn't like a faulty machine, because they utilized 2 different machines, 2 different investigators, and done at the same time, I believe. And so it's very unlikely that all of them were able to figure out how to pass a lie detector test. I mean, let's be real. If your average person that lives out in the country, right, with no training, no nothing, not the tech savviest of folks, if they can figure out how to pass a lie detector test, then what's the point of even having them? And for those that say they're not admissible, the other point I was going to make is neither is the IGG, but look at where Brian Koberger is. The IGG is not admissible in court, but that mother trucker's up in jail, luckily not to be facing a fire squad. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, back to this. It's at an incline. Let's see. And so you have your blanket, you have your boot print, and it's a good ways in the middle. But I do think that there's the possibility that it'd be right around here. Just because if they walk down this area, I mean, that's pretty close to the middle. It's not exactly the middle. They could have exited out, walked this way, and then made the footprint somewhere else. But if indeed these prints are Jack and Lily's, and they're somewhere in this type of area like this, in this vicinity, in the middle of nowhere like this, then to me, this increases the likelihood that they're still out there in the forest somewhere, in the dense forest. I don't think somebody picked them up. I don't think somebody abducted them from this point here. It is interesting that there were 3 sets of prints. 2 were boots. Both were children. It doesn't say the size of the barefoot print, but there was a barefoot print there with them as well. I wonder if, because this wasn't found until late in the evening, or early morning. At what point maybe they circled back. Maybe they went into the woods, got lost, and ended up doing a big old circle and circled back. And by the time that one of them circled back, they no longer had shoes. Something happened. That's a possibility. But it is a weird one. That is very strange. But if in fact that these boot prints do end up belonging to them, I I 100% believe they wandered off, and they unfortunately wandered off out here. I don't think that it'd be logical to believe that somebody just came across them out here in the middle of nowhere. And I mean, even if they continue to walk, and there's these roads and these streets, and who knows how far they could have gone. There's a lake up here, Jenny Lake. I wonder if that lake has been looked into. You know, the problem with lakes like this and water, right? You got these rivers, is they feed animals. Animals like bears, coyotes, lions, animals drink from there. You know, your other animals drink from there too. So if you want to do a full circle of life here, you got your deer and everything else that go out there and they'll drink from the water and from the streams and stuff. And then you got the hunter predators that are going to be looking for them too. And so I wouldn't be surprised if, given how close some of these, you know, this water is, this river area to this place, I wouldn't be surprised if you found some wildlife in this area. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like if they were walking out here and something spooked them, if an animal came out of the brush or whatever the case may be and spooked them, and the kids ran into the forest or in the woods and just, you know, moved for an extended period of time. I mean, they could have been really into some brush. They could have tripped and then fallen into it. And, you know, there's a lot of possibilities out there. And so, to me, I strongly still suspect that, given the location or the direction of travel from the bus, the location of the blanket, the location of the possible footprints being out over here, kind of lead me to believe that they did walk this way. Let me know in the comment section. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that they may have wandered off this direction? Now, if you guys have any questions, put a couple stars. I'll answer your questions for the next 5 to 10 minutes or so. I do have another show tonight, so I got to prepare for that one. But I wanted to come on tonight and talk to you guys a little bit about the stuff that I found, kind of recap everything. RCMP didn't find anything. They kind of disclosed the area of where the boot print was, which kind of falls in line with the blanket, you know. And when you look at, let me pull this up real quick. So this says here that got a text from member on scene. Police handler located a distinctive set of footprints on a natural gas pipeline. And these are the prints, and this is supposedly what was very similar to what they had seen out there. You know, these boot prints, these shoe prints, and the barefoot prints. And then you have this document here. See, it says here that Corporal Martin and his dog were called to the area. He took photographs of the blanket. They walked about 1 kilometer in the area with his dog and the adjacent trail. They did not pick up a scent to complete the track. So it's kind of weird because it says it does not pick up the track. And then it says over here, and where is it at? It says your boot prints were found by the pipeline by GSAR Friday night into Saturday night morning with clumps of them in 2 different sizes. So it says here that the search team found them. Now, from what Daniel told me was that an untrained, and maybe this is why it's a little bit different, an untrained like bloodhound is what found them. Found the tracks or the boot prints after being where the blanket was. A kilometer out, that was about the same distance that we measured out. Down, it says here a kilometer. It's a pipeline. No, down here. It said it walked about 1 kilometer in the area with his dog adjacent on the trail. They did not pick up a scent to complete the track. So it's weird, right? How it's kind of contradicting within the information that we have. But this from here to there, the blanket to, let me change that to kilometers. Yeah, up here is about 1.9 kilometers. Yeah. And if you don't do this like loop-de-loop, if all you're doing is drawing a straight path there, you know, where they could have walked, it's 1.03 kilometers. So is this the path they took and where they found the boot print? I think it's a good possibility. DT, are you still questioning that the neighbor theory? I am now. Other items were found, drinking bottle, etc. It's a good point. It's a good point. You know, there was a t-shirt, male t-shirt found. I think it was to a child, though. But a water bottle, a pink blanket that was intact. That's a good point. Could some other items have been found or were stolen and these were dumped? It's a good point. And I'm not opposed to that. Now, could these tracks and everything be planted? I mean, I think it's kind of hard to plant the bear footprints. You know, and I'm not talking about bear like animal bear. I'm talking about like barefooted without shoes and socks. You know, the barefooted footprints. You know, I think those would be kind of difficult to fake. But, you know, putting a blanket up there, you know, it's a possibility, I guess. You would assume somebody would have had to have known the area fairly well to have continued down the road. They would have probably had to handle this by foot to have gotten here. But you could be comfortable in doing this because you're not on the main road, right? So, like, it's not like people are going to be driving around looking for the kids and they're looking over here in this direction and out here. So you come back way out here. You're not visible from this main road there. You're not visible from over here. So you are in a pretty low visible area if you plant some stuff and then go back. I just, you know, now if that's the case, then, you know, if it is planted, then it's probably something happened maybe over here. Maybe they wandered off and maybe they did get picked off at the driveway. You know, maybe they go to the front of the house and they were just playing in the front yard and, you know, somebody walks up, possible neighbor says, hey, you know, I'm going to take you to school. You guys should be in school. They get in the car. Something happens. He goes and, you know, takes the blanket out of the garbage. But it's weird because the blanket was in the bottom of the garbage can. And by this point, law enforcement have already known. So they would have had to have taken the blanket out, you know, before around the time that the abduction would have taken place. And so, you know, he goes, I mean, especially being at the very bottom of the trash can, I would assume that, you know, he would have had to have had that for a while then. I don't know. It just doesn't, the pieces don't fit properly when I start to talk about it this way now. Knowing what I know about the blanket and its location and stuff, it's the pieces don't fit quite right. I don't like it. But I don't know. I got to see. I'll ask Daniel again. And when I have my interview with him, I'll go into a little bit more in depth about the trash that was on top of the trash bag that held the blanket. You know, was it accessible? Like, was there a lot of trash on top of it? Because I've seen like a dumpster type of trash can. And so maybe it was that it was at the bottom, but it wasn't like stacked heavily on top of it. You know, maybe it was accessible still, even though it was at the bottom. So I'll have to ask him that. But it's weird. It's weird. Now if the kids had gotten into it and tore it, and they had a piece from beforehand and they just, had it outside or something and, took it with them, then that would make a little bit more sense. But it's a confusing piece to the puzzle, that blanket, where it came from, how it got out there, how it got so high in the tree. It's confusing. When it was there, was it visible from the bus? Camera footage? I don't know. I find the 3 sets of prints interesting and the timing of the blanket. I do too. But again, I don't. So here's the one thing that kind of makes me put a pause on the whole Haley thing. Well, supposedly, Haley has been talking not the most positively about Malaya. She's had some questions about Malaya's behavior since the kids have gone missing. The fact that she's gone out or dressed up or gone to the beach, stuff like that. Doesn't seem like she's in a lot of like sadness. And so my thing is if she was involved in this, then she would have been if she would have known that she planted obviously would have known she planted the blanket. Well, she would have known that she would have been doing it to protect her. So of course she would know that there's something weird going on if she did that. So I find it a little bit, I'm still a little bit on the cautious side. I know that some folks will say that maybe it's because they're turning on each other and they don't want to completely give each other up. That's a possibility. It's a investigator's dream is your suspects to turn on each other and then to come in and talk. That's one of the things that I say about Daniel and Malaya is that they're the perfect, with what you would look for if you were an investigator. You want to separate your suspects. They've separated. You want to make sure they're not talking. They're not talking. I think there's like visitation is done. So there's no, with Meadow, there's no communication. There's no passing each other or anything like that. You want to turn them on each other so that way you can get some concrete evidence against each other so that you can file a case. And by all accounts, it does appear that they've turned on each other, but I haven't seen anything that says that they've gotten any evidence from that. So when you partner that up with all the cooperation and lie detector test, the bank statements, geolocation, the download of the phones with the text messages and the data from the internet, and there's nothing there, it just kind of points in one direction. You know what I'm saying? And that direction being not involved. Let's see. A couple more. Why did Lily go to bed with her backpack? Seems something was planned. Thoughts? I mean, maybe, but it also, like, kids go to sleep with weird things all the time. You know what I mean? So it could be weird. It could be something planned. It also could be, she just enjoyed having her backpack with her. That was her favorite thing. Kids go to sleep with weird things all the time. Backpacks, clothes, shoes, whole 9 yards, toys. So, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's anything. Cause again, they polygraphed Malaya and asked her about the disappearance. So it's, better be interesting. Just because the RCMP say they haven't found anything doesn't mean they have not. I mean, I guess, but what would be the point to set this false sense of security for the community? That'd be dangerous to say, hey, there's nothing there. Don't worry about it. It'd be one thing to do it on a short period of time if you're trying to get somebody to trip up or give them some sort of false sense of security. I'd 100% agree with you. But it's been some time now. And the more that stuff comes out and the more that they have put in documents. Now, I don't know, how RCMP or things work in Canada as far as, lies and stuff like that or stretching or bending of the truth. But these are documents that they put this information on. It's one thing to say something like, oh, we don't believe this or whatever, but it's another thing to put it on a document and then go through the exhaustive search that you did so that you can notify the public, because that's what it was for, right? It was for the public. It was for the reporters, so that the reporters and the public can know that, hey, this isn't to your, this is what we've done. This is what we've searched. So that way we can rule out the parents. I mean, to me, it seems like some folks rather stick to things that they believed in before, just so that they don't come out wrong, which is the wrong thing to do, in my opinion. That's why I follow the evidence. It's kind of like in the Delphi case. I would have been there too with everybody that thought Ron Logan did something. Now, me, I follow the evidence. So as soon as I saw the, bridge guy video, like had I broken it down, I would have been able to tell you guys, hey, look at his pants, look at his jeans, they're folded up. You can see the bottom of the jeans look white in color. Ron Logan's 6'2". His pants are sagging. You can see where the knees should be is closer to where the ankles are on the pants. That's indicative of somebody that is shorter. Now, this guy lived in Delphi, Indiana. There's not like he's going to go get tailor-made clothing. So you're probably stuck with what you can get from the Walmart or the local stores by. And if you're a guy that's short, and there's going to be some issues, right? Your sweater, like the one that he was wearing, if you look at his arms and the sleeves on the arms, they were really scrunched up. That's another sign indicative of that the person that is fairly short. The feet size were pretty small. You also had the fact that the shirt was coming out underneath the blanket by a significant amount, which is another indication that the person was short. Ron Logan was 6'2", and Richard Allen was 5'5". And so if it was a taller guy there, you wouldn't have somebody needing to fold up their pants. You probably see a high water type situation with his pant legs when he's moving. You wouldn't see a guy that has his arm sleeves really scrunched up. You would see somebody whose arms are sticking out a little bit past the cuff. There are many of those type of clues that you can pick up and go through to kind of determine things. And so I would have been off of that it was Ron Logan fairly quickly. But I would have admitted that, hey, he asked for an alibi right away. There's some weird stuff there. The kids were found on his property, 100%. But as the evidence comes out and as the evidence, is being explained, and as law enforcement explain what they have done and not done, and the exhaustive means of how they've investigated Daniel and Janie, if you follow the evidence, it's pretty clear and easy to understand. They didn't do anything. Now, could they be lying? 100%. They definitely could, I guess. And could, they be duping everybody? Sure. I just don't think that that's the smartest idea, to give, the community out there in Lansdowne some sort of false, sense of security that their kids are safe and that there isn't some sort of horrible person that are doing that would do something to kids out there. And that they're going to allow that person to be free and basically say, no, they didn't do it, so don't worry about them. I just don't see the benefit in doing that. You know what I'm saying? In fact, it's more common to try to associate pressure by telling people what, the truth is, and telling people that, you suspect something from somebody or that, that's why you'll hear law enforcement agencies come out and say, hey, they're no longer cooperating. They're not doing this. They're not doing that. Why do they do that? Why do they go to the public? Why? So that media and everybody else can start picking it up, start talking about it, add a little bit of pressure, add a little bit of stress, and then that person can come in with a lawyer or whatever the case may be and talk. So just kind of weird that a lot of the stuff that you would expect out of somebody who was a suspect, they're not really doing that anymore. Now, at one time, it sure did seem like Daniel and Malaya were hot priority, top of the list, suspect 1 and 2 on RCMP's table, come, the first few days after the investigation. But it does to me seem like they've even kind of backed off of it. If you had a suspect and they wanted to talk to you, you'd bring them in every day. They don't even want to talk to Daniel as much anymore. So it's just the behaviors aren't there. All righty, guys. Well, I got to get going because I got another show to do here in a little bit. Does a questionable neighbor have a kid? Yes, they do. And they also ride the bus with Jack and Lily. One more. Did they search Janie's 7-acre property that is between Earl's and her brother's? I don't know. They searched the area in which where the kids were at. I don't know about any other property that belongs to them. That would be news to me, Cheryl. But again, that's kind of the stuff that that people say random things. Like the next person can come in and say, what about the 5-acre property that's on the other side of town? And then there not even be a 5-acre property. Or I've heard somebody say something like that. Oh, there's a 5-acre property. And I'm like, where did you hear that? Oh, I heard it from somebody else in somebody else's chat. Oh, some random person said that. Now, I don't know if they have some other property out there. But from what I understand is that there's only one person who was being uncooperative when it came to the searches in the area. And that person is the neighbor that I was speaking with. All righty, guys. Well, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, ring that notification bell. I'll be back probably in about 45 minutes with Dr. Vona. It's actually at 8:15, so at about 30 minutes with Dr. Vona on the D4VD David and Celeste Rivas case. You don't want to miss it. We'll see you guys in a few minutes. I'll be back later. Peace.